Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and warmest greetings from Jakarta, Indonesia. Good evening to participants joining us virtually from the US, and good afternoon to those joining us from the other time zones elsewhere in the world. I heard that this Indo-Pacific Business Forum has a couple thousand registered participants, and so we welcome all those who are tuning in right now to this panel discussion. So welcome to this panel discussion on building ASEAN's workforce for tomorrow. This panel discussion is one of the concurrent breakout sessions that is part of the ongoing Third Indo-Pacific Business Forum. I am Rodora Babaran, one of the directors in ASEAN Secretariat, and it is my distinct privilege to be the moderator for this panel discussion. As the Director of Human Development Directorate that looks after the ASEAN Secretariat support, to ASEAN member states on cooperation on health, education, labor and civil service, welfare, poverty eradication, women empowerment, and children's rights and welfare. I'm excited and very much looking forward to this panel discussion because we are joined by very distinguished speakers who hold important positions and roles on US-ASEAN relations from the government and private sector side, and whose roles are very relevant to our topic on building ASEAN's workforce for the future. At this point, I'd like to introduce our distinguished speakers. We have Ms. Melissa Brown, the Chargé d'Affaires of the U.S. Mission to the ASEAN. So Ms. Melissa Brown assumed the role of Chargé d'Affaires at the ASEAN in Jakarta, Indonesia since August last year. And formerly, she was the Counselor for Economic and Political Affairs at the U.S. Embassy in Singapore, where she also served as Acting Deputy Chief of Mission for 1 year. She also co-founded the embassy's Diversity and Inclusion Working Group with a leadership role in championing inclusivity in the workplace. A Southeast Asia expert with a strong trade policy background, Ms. Melissa was previously assigned to Jakarta, Indonesia as the Trade and Investment Unit Chief in the U.S. Embassy, Jakarta's Economic Section. And Ms. Melissa was also posted to Washington, D.C., where she was detailed to the Office of the U.S. Trade Representatives as Director for Southeast Asia. Prior to the USTR, she was the U.S. State Department's Vietnam Desk Officer responsible for economic issues. Ms. Melissa grew up in New Jersey and Jakarta, Indonesia, so she speaks Indonesian and French and also studied Khmer and Hungarian. She and her husband have 2 children. So welcome to the panel discussion, Ms. Melissa Brown. Next, we have Ambassador Michael W. Michalak. He is the Senior Vice President and Regional Managing Director. Ambassador Michalak joined the U.S.-ASEAN Business Council in September of 2015 as Senior Vice President and Regional Managing Director, and he oversees the Council's 6 offices in the ASEAN from the Council's regional headquarters in Singapore, and leads the Council's regional advisory efforts and engages regularly with key ASEAN policymakers and thought leaders to offer his unique perspective on the key role of U.S. businesses in ASEAN. Ambassador Michalak most recently worked as an independent business consultant focused on Asia and particularly Vietnam, and he also served as a senior advisor to the private sector host committee of the U.S. APEC in year 2011. His diplomatic career with the U.S. State Department spanned more than 30 years and included postings to Tokyo, Japan, Sydney, Australia, Islamabad, Pakistan, Beijing, China, as well as Washington, D.C. He served as U.S. Ambassador to Vietnam from August 2007 and to February 2011. And prior to his position in Vietnam, Ambassador Michalak was Ambassador and Senior U.S. official to APEC. So clearly, we have Ambassador Michalak, who is very well acquainted and familiar with this region. Welcome to the panel discussion, Ambassador Michael. Next, we have Ambassador Kelley Currie, and she is the Ambassador at Large for Global Women's Issues, Office of Global Women's Issues, Department of State, the United States. Ambassador Currie was appointed Ambassador at Large by President Trump in December 2019, and she served simultaneously as the U.S. representative at the UN Commission on the Status of Women. Prior to her appointment, she led the Department of State's Office of Global Criminal Justice in 2019 and served under Ambassador Nikki Haley as the United States representative to the UN Economic and Social Council and alternative representative to the UN General Assembly from 2017 to 2018. Throughout her career in foreign policy, Ambassador Currie has specialized in human rights, political reform, development, and humanitarian issues with a focus on Asia-Pacific region. And from 2009 until her appointment to the US UN leadership, she served as a senior fellow with the Project 2049 Institute, and she has held senior policy positions with the Department of State, the US Congress, and several international and governmental human rights and humanitarian organizations. Welcome to the panel discussion, Ambassador Currie. Okay, last but certainly not the least, we have Mr. Simon Dale, and he is the Managing Director for Southeast Asia of the Adobe. A respected leader in the industry, Simon has over 3 decades of professional experience in the technology sector, including 18 years in Asia and the Pacific. His career has spanned development, sales management, and executive leadership of both startups and large corporations. Most recently, Simon held senior roles at the MAPR and SAP, where he established and scaled new businesses across the region and gained deep and practical understanding of the software and cloud services business. Simon currently sits on the advisory board of the Nanyang Polytechnic School of IT and is an active mentor and angel investor in multiple startups. He's also a mentor and coach to early talent through the Mentors Hub. So welcome to the panel discussion, Mr. Simon Dale. Before we proceed, allow me to briefly share with you how important this topic is for ASEAN. Since the establishment of ASEAN as a regional organization, it has consistently put emphasis on ensuring that its efforts are centered to and oriented towards its most important asset, the people. Practically all ASEAN declarations and documents highlight the value that ASEAN puts in promoting security, stability, and prosperity for its people, thereby ensuring their welfare and well-being, as that is the best way for this region to achieve inclusive and sustainable development. ASEAN has been and will continue in its pursuit of the shared vision for peace and prosperity for its people. The ASEAN member states have been reaping the dividends of peace, such as economic growth, dramatic decline in poverty, improvement in well-being and welfare of the people, and enhanced sense of ASEAN identity and community. There has been no war or any major conflict between ASEAN countries since its founding in 1968. And the ASEAN's GDP of 2.3 million as of 2018 now places ASEAN member states collectively as the 5th largest economy in the world. And the people living on less than $1.25 per day has dropped from 1 in 2 in year 2000 to only 1 in 8 as of 2015. And education and health outcomes have significantly improved, particularly literacy, enrollment rates, infant mortality, and life expectancy. And there is a greater sense of ASEAN identity and community amongst its people. In order for ASEAN and ASEAN member states to sustain these gains, a vision has been set out for 2025, which complements the Sustainable Development Goals and aligns with various international and global frameworks. Apart from deepening economic integration, securing peace and stability in the region and beyond, ASEAN is committed to ensuring that people will feel the benefits of ASEAN by putting people at the center of its efforts and ensuring ASEAN is people-oriented and people-centered. So for ASEAN, it looks at human capital as consisting of the knowledge, the skills, health, and that the people accumulate over their lives, enabling them to realize their potential as productive members of society. And human capital fosters capital, which is in turn associated with higher economic growth. Human capital is therefore a central driver of sustainable growth and poverty reduction for this region, and by improving people's skills, health, knowledge, and resilience, people can be more productive, flexible, and innovative. ASEAN is acutely aware of the importance of investing in human capital development. Its importance is enshrined in the ASEAN Charter and various policy documents and pronouncements, the most recent of which is the ASEAN Declaration on Human Resources Development for the Changing World of Work, which was adopted in the ASEAN Summit in June this year. Next month at the 37th ASEAN Summit, the leaders will also adopt the roadmap to implement the said declaration. And in September this year, ASEAN also launched the ASEAN Technical Vocational Education and Training Council, or TVET Council, which is a multi-stakeholder forum that will coordinate and synergize the work on TVET of various TVET stakeholders in the region. At the upcoming summit as well, we are expecting that the comprehensive 4IR work plan of ASEAN, as well as the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework following this pandemic, will be adopted by the leaders. Together, these documents are envisioned to enhance and intensify cooperation of ASEAN on human resources development, human capital development towards a future workforce that is future ready and resilient. Now, at this point, we will proceed to the panel discussion. We have about 40 minutes for this discussion, where I will be asking 4 to 5 questions and would ask that each panelist share their responses or views concisely. The questions will revolve around issues that are important to preparing the workforce for the future, such as questions regarding small and medium-scale enterprises or digital economy, the digital divide, education, health and youth, women and COVID-19, and as well as the youth. And at this point, I would like to start off with our first question. So I hope our panelists are ready. So first off is a question on the SMEs or digital economy. As you know, ASEAN has the world's fastest growing internet marketplace. Yet in 2019, only 16% of SMEs in the region did business online, despite contributing 50% to the region's GDP and providing 80% of jobs. The question is, how can the benefits of the digital economy be brought to SMEs and the people who own and work in them? At this point, I would like to first direct this question to Ambassador Michalak, please.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and to answer this very important question. I think the U.S.-ASEAN Business Council remains committed to support all ASEAN SMEs to be more competitive, cohesive, responsive to the opportunities and challenges, especially during the global pandemic. We have to first understand the challenges that the SMEs are facing, such as the fact that they don't have the necessary know-how to switch to a digital-centric business model, or the technical needs to establish an online presence. The way in which we're trying to enhance or empower ASEAN SMEs to adapt, recover, and thrive is to enhance their competitiveness, because there is a need to deepen engagements and provide them with access to resources. With adequate access to technology, including platforms, software, APIs, and the rest, SMEs can quickly build and scale up offerings, overcoming geographical boundaries and further spurring SMEs' growth. Additionally, with the adoption of digital payments, contactless payments, SMEs can grow their revenues, manage operations, and gain access to formal financial services. The U.S. ABC has got a strong and robust program in SMEs, and particularly in SME training programs. We have been already this year, we've held 4 SME webinars, and over the past 5 years or so, we have trained over 700 SMEs and have over 7,000 individual attendees at our webinars. This year, as I said, we had 4 in the Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, and Singapore, and we have plans to do more in Myanmar, Malaysia, and Vietnam. Our online platform is called the SME Academy, and since the COVID-19 outbreak, we've seen almost a doubling of attendance in that SME Online Academy. We've added 14 new courses this year to that resource, and now have more than 60 courses. But it's more than just the US ABC program. All of our member companies have got, in one way or another, training programs that are designed to introduce SMEs to the digital economy and to teach them how to use the web, how to use the internet, how to become search engine savvy people, and enhance their competitiveness. In this COVID time, a digital strategy is no longer just a nice add-on to your business plan. It is a critical part of your survival program. So we certainly hope that all SMEs will take advantage of some of these online programs and talk to your local representatives of Adobe, Google, Facebook, Amazon, and the rest in order to take advantage of some of the programs that are out there. In order to really take advantage of this, though, governments also have to have corresponding investments in internet infrastructure, and I think maybe we'll get to that later, but that would be all for my opening remarks at this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Michael. You just mentioned the important role played by the government in this regard. So now I think it's timely that I call on CDA Brown to speak about how the U.S. ASEAN cooperation is intending to cooperate in this regard. CDA Brown, please.
Great, thank you so much, and hello to everyone. You'll see from my remarks that the U.S. ASEAN mission works very closely with the U.S. ASEAN Business Council. I think Ambassador Michalak stole a few of my points, but it does show that the U.S. government and the U.S. private sector are very well aligned and working together to address these issues. We all know this is a very difficult time, but I remain an eternal optimist. And I think if there is a silver lining about the challenges that we're living through with COVID-19, it might just be the acceleration of the digital transformation. We know, though, it's very likely that SMEs will be the catalyst for the recovery. So we really need to put the emphasis on helping them to adopt technologies and the business models so that they can adjust to the new normal, the digital future, and what's to come. It's when I talk about the United States, I'm not just talking about the U.S. government, because we are absolutely more than that. And I'm sure Ambassador Currie will also note this as well. We look to work with our partners like U.S. ASEAN Business Council and Adobe. And one of the ways that we've done that, as Ambassador Michalak noted, is this ASEAN SME Academy. The fact that it's free, it's on demand, it's this portal that businesses can access the resources, the tools they need, especially when folks are stuck at home. The fact that they can continue to build their skill set and look to the future, how they can build their online presence, as well as how they'll be able to fight back and try in terms of the recovery. Another potential step in supporting an SME-led recovery and a broader digital transformation is something also Ambassador Michalak mentioned. It's SME's ability to adopt to digital platforms. We've been working with ASEAN states, the US government has, for quite some time to prepare financial industries so that they can help to facilitate this transition. So let me just share one quick example, going over to the Philippines. And the good news is we had some real foresight here. Back in 2015, which seems incredibly long ago now, USAID brought the central bank and other leaders in the payment industry together to develop a national framework for electronic payment systems. And then in 2017, the Philippine Central Bank mandated that all of the supervised financial institutions adopt that framework. It triggered a nationwide push to adopt e-payment solutions. I think it's this type of forward-looking efforts that really enable businesses today to respond to this new preference away from cash and towards touch-free transactions, thanks to COVID-19. So with that, let me turn it back over to Rodora.
Thank you, CDA Brown. I think that's a very interesting information you shared, and just shows how the work between U.S. and ASEAN member states, especially at the national level, can translate into concrete policy actions and programs that are very relevant on the ground. Now, I would like to hand over to Ambassador Currie, because as you know, the size of the MSMEs in ASEAN is fairly significantly large, and they are predominantly women-led, or most of the ones leading in the SMEs are really women. So what's your take on this, Ambassador Currie?
Thank you. This is such a great question, because we put entrepreneurship at the heart of the Women's Global Development and Prosperity Initiative, which is our major women's economic empowerment whole of government effort that the United States has been implementing for about 1.5 years now, since the launch of it in February 2019. And we're really proud to say that we're partnering in this area specifically with a number of ASEAN economies, and continue to look for opportunities to develop those partnerships. And as you note, I mean, for us, it's really the way that we're thinking about this, especially in light of the pandemic, is we always have thought of women as drivers of economic prosperity and as critical players in creating really truly sustainable and durable economic prosperity. And now we are really talking to economies, talking to partners about how you position women as drivers of the recovery. And critical to that is making sure that women-owned businesses, which do tend to be small, medium-sized, micro businesses, that women-owned businesses, women-operated businesses are able to come back, are able to compete, are able to adapt to the current environment, and that they are able. And with COVID, the first thing that we've seen go, and that there has been a disproportionate impact on women, especially because their businesses tend to be in informal sectors. And one of the projects, or one of the main focus areas that we've had with our entrepreneurship work through WGDP is how do we help women make that leap from working in an informal sector or having an informal small business to having a registered business, having a real, having a legally established business that allows them to engage in a whole, that expands their potential as business owners. So we have a great program called the Academy of Women Entrepreneurs that does just that. It teaches women who either have their own business already or are interested in starting a business, how to develop a business plan, how to what they need to do to access financing, and all of the things that they need to successfully launch, build, and scale their businesses. And a big part of that is making sure that they are looking at the online and digital platforms, and that they are building that into their business from the beginning, and that it's part of their planning. We currently are working on this program. This is currently available in the Philippines and Malaysia, and we're adding countries all the time, all across the Indo-Pacific region. Another area where we're working to create greater opportunities for women, and that directly links to this issue of the digital divide, is that we need to do more to get women to not just pursue educational opportunities in STEM fields, in science, technology, engineering, and math, but to then apply those their learning and their experience in STEM, their education and their training in STEM, to entrepreneurial pursuits. Often women end up leaving STEM fields because they can't figure out how to make the jump from their theoretical or their academic background into a practical application for their knowledge and skills. And so we're working with a lot of different platforms to tackle this, because this is obviously a huge growth field for in all economies, but certainly in the regional economies in the Asia Pacific and in ASEAN. I mean, globally, we expect to see 8% growth in STEM field job opportunities and STEM field economic area sectors, as compared to a 3.4% growth across all other sectors. That it's expected to add, 1 million new jobs, and that those jobs pay higher. So we want women positioned to be able to compete in these fields, and making sure that they're embedding digital skills and thinking about digital platforms from the beginning is critical to this. And then the final thing I would say, as Melissa emphasized, is that we've got to partner with the private sector. Growth is going to come from the private sector. It's not going to come from the public sector or from government jobs. It's going to come from the private sector. And so a huge part of what we do, and where we've had tremendous positive response, is from our private sector, the US private sector. And they are extremely enthusiastic about how they can help women-owned businesses in the developing world to access supply chains and get involved in procurement with them, and because they want to diversify their supply chains, and they recognize that they also need to work with women-owned and women-led businesses, because it's better for their ability to meet their customer base and to understand it. And so they see a lot of value in this. and they are helping women-owned and women-led companies in countries around the world with things like access to finance, setting up digital platforms in order to be able to participate in opportunities. And are working on a global scale with a partner called We Connect to help build out a global network of women-owned and led businesses across the world that Fortune 500, Fortune 50, large multinational corporations can tap into this network when they're looking for suppliers. And so these are some of the things that we're doing. At the end of the day, though, it's really important that countries at the national level and then regional organizations such as ASEAN are thinking about their standards and their networks, and they're looking at open platforms that do allow for transparent and transparent competition, that create opportunities, that allow a range of partners to participate instead of being very exclusive arrangements with one partner, or that discourage good governance and transparency. We want to avoid those kinds of platforms and those kinds of systems. So we continue to work at the meta level on our clean networks, on the kinds of standard setting that does foster a pro-growth, private sector led model that other countries can succeed with.
Thank you very much for that very informative sharing that you just made. When we talk about women and the SMEs, I think it's also inevitable that we start talking already about resilience, recovery, and the digital divide. In that respect, before I move on to the next question, I would like to also get the thoughts of Mr. Simon Dale regarding the SMEs and the digital economy question that I shared when we started this panel discussion. Based on your background, you are very familiar with various sizes of companies based on your personal and professional background, and being an angel investor yourself. So what's your view about how to ensure that the SMEs and the people who own and work in them would benefit from the digital economy?
Yeah, thank you, Rodora. I'll pick up on a few of the themes that have already been mentioned and give my perspectives. First of all, I see digital transformation is a cliche in terms of the acceleration during COVID, but what is it, right? And what I've started to see is we've got some great partnerships with the public sector around how do you bring the things that SMEs can action to them, that they can trust, that they've been curated in a way that it will actually benefit them, right? So everyone sees advertisements and gets tried to be sold something. The great thing that we're doing at Adobe with the US ASEAN Business Council, with IMDA in Singapore, for example, around being able to bring our capabilities for SMEs to a curated environment where they know that somebody's validated that it's worth their while taking a look. And I think that method and that process is a really good thing to help those SMEs adopt and actually make a difference. And I'd say there's two dimensions to that adoption which can make a difference to SMEs. One is their own internal productivity cost reduction, which will make them a more sustainable business, particularly during the current times. If business is down or challenging, anything that's going to make them more efficient and reduce their costs of transacting is going to help, right? And help give them longer runways. And that's certainly in the startup space what everybody was told right at the beginning: how long's your runway and how can you extend it, right? So SMEs need to think the same way. There's the other dimension then of, once you've made yourself more sustainable, how are you using these digital technologies to reach your customers and connect to your customers in a better way and reach a new audience, right? Transact with them. People talk about e-commerce, but e-commerce is the last step of doing a transaction. There's a whole bunch of stuff in how do you reach those customers that these digital technologies can enable. So that's the second dimension. The first is internal. The other one is really, how do you reach this massive market in ASEAN, which is going to be the fourth largest economy in the world by 2030 by predictions, right? And how you take advantage of that. And it's not just about exporting things. It could be that people are offering services across markets which were relevant. Using these digital technologies can help. I'd also like to touch on Ambassador Currie's point about women in tech. I've been in Singapore almost 20 years and worked across the region. The great thing about ASEAN is there are lots of women in tech. Some of my best friends are senior ladies. There was recently a top 100 women in tech published in Singapore. And it's great to see that kind of female talent in our industry, which it was different when I worked in Europe. And I know a lot of strong female leaders and female talent up and coming in organizations. And that dimension is a good thing for us to take more advantage of in asking those ladies to be role models for other people who may not think about a career in tech in this part of the world, and attract more women to come into this world and use more of these digital capabilities. So I certainly think that's an opportunity for us. And I like the idea of this We Connect you mentioned, Ambassador Currie, so I'll have to dig into that and see how we can help as well.
Thank you for that response, Mr. Simon. It is good that you touch again about the issue of women in tech, because our next question is actually about women, where I would like to highlight a study by the UN that found that women are typically paid 25% less than men in ASEAN and are kept in lower end roles, while the lack of professional opportunities for women costs ASEAN countries 18% of their GDP on average. So maybe I would hand this back to Ambassador Currie. What do you think can ASEAN and the United States do to raise the salaries and the workforce participation of women?
Well, this is exactly why we created the Women's Global Development Prosperity Initiative in the first place, is because we recognized that there were these that every economy in the world, including our own to a degree, has this tremendous untapped or underutilized resource that is keeping it from having from reaching its full potential, and that is the women of the countries and the women and barriers that keep women from fully participating in the economy. And we honed in on 3 specific kind of areas. And one of them is, and the first pillar of this is skills and training, and making sure that women have the skills to participate fully in the economy and to get higher paying jobs. And then we looked at, okay, what is holding women back, especially when they're working as entrepreneurs or they're trying to found their own business? And I talked a little bit about that before. And so we have a whole pillar set up about how to support women as entrepreneurs. And a lot of that is around the skills for entrepreneurship, and then financing is the key there, making sure that women have access to finance. Because you look across the statistics on access to finance are even worse than the wage gap statistics, frankly. And so we're very focused on how we help bridge that, reduce that gap between women's access to finance. And then in the third area, the third pillar where we're looking is at making sure that any legal and regulatory barriers that keep women from being able to work in the same jobs and sectors are being tackled and removed. A lot of times, what we see is that, I know in the United States and in other countries, we're taking certain proactive measures to try to improve and address the wage gap and these things and understand it better and what the drivers of it are. But in a lot of countries, you have laws that women can't work in certain sectors of the economy, and those sectors tend to be sectors where there's good high paying jobs, but they're considered dirty or dangerous jobs that aren't suitable for women, and they're legally not allowed to work in them, or they're not allowed to do night work, and so they're not able to get employed at jobs where they would need to be able to work at night. And so tackling those kinds of things, restrictions that may have made sense at some point or were considered protective in some other context, but now are just really keeping women on the sidelines and keeping them from being able to earn and work in the same kinds of jobs and have the choices and the options that will help them move up. And we are working with different partners on different parts of the value chain and on different parts of the ladder. I mean, it's one of the things that's always frustrated me about a lot of the development programs that were targeted toward women is they seem to, stick women in this artisanal kind of lane of, they're going to make baskets and sell them in the marketplace to one another. And I'm like, yeah, no, we're not doing that anymore. We really need to give women the tools and the skills and the inputs that they need to be able to build a business, grow it, scale it, employ other women, and we know the numbers are there, that we know that every dollar that women earn, they invest back into their communities, back into their families, into their children's educations. It benefits the society writ large. So we are working with partners that get this and are trying to help unlock all that untapped potential in their economy. And we know from a study that we did that there, if we were able to remove just the barriers in the five fundamental areas of law that we've identified, and again, it's things like not being able to own and inherit property on an equal basis, which gets at women, who work in the agricultural sector a lot of times, or even own a small shop together with their spouse. Or being able to use their house as collateral, being able to being able to travel freely and go around and get new markets for their businesses, being able to have access to institutions, being able to work in the same jobs and sectors as men, and being able to I always forget that having access to credit. So those 5 sectors, if we removed all the barriers that currently exist legally in countries around the world, just in those 5 areas, it would create 7.7 trillion additional dollars in global GDP across the developing world. And that's huge. That's literally just money we're leaving on the table with things that don't cost anything for governments to implement either. So we're looking at these low cost, high impact things that governments can do to help unlock opportunities for women.
Thank you for that, Ambassador Currie. I think at this point it would be important to hear from the views as well of Ambassador Michael on this. Being a leader in the region when it comes to businesses operating, U.S. businesses operating in the region, on how do we make sure that the U.S. companies here and abroad are really hospitable and enabling enough to make sure that women would also benefit from this. Ambassador Michael?
Thanks very much. And through several other, I think I'm still on now, right? Good. You can hear me? Good. Thanks, Simon. Through the Women's Empowerment Network and also through the various other networks within ASEAN. We also are working to support Every Woman, Every Child, a global strategy in Southeast Asia, where we made our first commitment in September of 1918, and this has proved quite vital in facilitating Fortune 500 companies to bring in education, technologies, jobs, and opportunities for women globally. Besides doing this on sort of the government-to-government level, we're also working on bilaterally and a company level. Underwriters Laboratories, besides doing this on sort of the government-to-government level, we're also working on bilaterally and a company level. Underwriters Laboratories has been collaborating with USAID for the ASEAN US Science Prize for Women, which recognizes talent in science and the STEM, not so much STEM as science, the PhDs and people who are developing the next generation of the next big thing, collaborating with USAID for the ASEAN US Science Prize for Women, which recognizes talent in science and the STEM, not so much STEM as science, the PhDs and people who are developing the next generation of the next big thing in ICT and in other health and other sectors. UPS has got a women's exporters program, and this not only thing in ICT and in other health and other sectors. UPS has got a women's exporters program, and this not only teaches the kinds of things that Ambassador Currie was saying, but quite frankly, even more nitty-gritty type things as enhancing knowledge on customs regulations, supply chain processes, going into the details of trade agreements and other export opportunities. We're also improving market access by partnering with, which is the kinds of things that Ambassador Currie was saying, but quite frankly, even more nitty-gritty type things as enhancing knowledge on customs regulations, supply chain processes, going into the details of trade agreements and other export opportunities. We're also improving market access by partnering with NGOs and governments while leveraging UPS's comprehensive product portfolio for small businesses to help women entrepreneurs identify market access opportunities. NGOs and governments while leveraging UPS's comprehensive product portfolio for small businesses to help women entrepreneurs identify market access opportunities and tap high demand industries that suit all of their skills and circumstances. And we also are working to enable regulatory frameworks through policy dialogues that would foster conducive environment that enables greater export growth by women-owned businesses. And these are the kinds of opportunities and tap high demand industries that suit all of their skills and circumstances. And we also are working to enable regulatory frameworks through policy dialogues that would foster conducive environment that enables greater export growth by women-owned businesses. And these are the kinds of things that look at those 5 categories that Ambassador Currie mentioned and actually use the private sector leverage to talk with like-minded organizations within ASEAN countries, as well as with SME organizations in the ASEAN governments, and as well as working with gender-related NGOs and those organizations, again, within each one of our ASEAN governments. So the Visa Foundation is another example of a foundation of one of our great payments companies that's working with things that look at those 5 categories that Ambassador Currie mentioned and actually use the private sector leverage to talk with like-minded organizations within ASEAN countries, as well as with SME organizations in the ASEAN governments, and as well as working with gender-related NGOs and those organizations, again, within each one of our ASEAN governments. So the Visa Foundation is another example of a foundation of one of our great payments companies that's working with USAID to support advancing the Women Empowerment Fund, which is an initiative to identify best strategies for women's entrepreneurs to access investment capital in emerging markets. Capital, as you know, is one of the biggest problems for all levels of SMEs. And as Ambassador Currie mentioned, USAID to support advancing the Women Empowerment Fund, which is an initiative to identify best strategies for women's entrepreneurs to access investment capital in emerging markets. Capital, as you know, is one of the biggest problems for all levels of SMEs. And as Ambassador Currie mentioned, it's an even greater problem for women. So we're trying to work at all different levels of government, civil society, and the private sector to make sure that it's an even greater problem for women. So we're trying to work at all different levels of government, civil society, and the private sector to make sure that we try to incorporate gender equality and women's entrepreneurship into all of the things that we do throughout ASEAN. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just very quickly, Mr. Simon, from the perspective of Adobe, is there anything you wish to add to the discussion?
We try to incorporate gender equality and women's entrepreneurship into all of the things that we do throughout ASEAN. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just very quickly, Mr. Simon, from the perspective of Adobe, is there anything you wish to add to the discussion on hand?
Yeah, for this topic in particular, I've only been at Adobe for a year, but since 2008, Adobe's achieved global pay parity.
On hand.
For this topic in particular, I've only been at Adobe for a year, but since 2008, Adobe's achieved global pay parity on a gender basis. So it's been one of the leaders in this space. And a year ago when I joined Adobe, I was really pleased with 2 dimensions of our business. One is the diversity in the Southeast Asia business. We have over 150 people, and it's fantastic diversity of talent. But I also have 60% women in gender basis. So it's been one of the leaders in this space. And a year ago when I joined Adobe, I was really pleased with 2 dimensions of our business. One is the diversity in the Southeast Asia business. We have over 150 people, and it's fantastic diversity talent. But I also have 60% women in management, which I was really pleased with. And it's great to see those kinds of established characteristics in a business like Adobe. We also in management, which I was really pleased with. And it's great to see those kinds of established characteristics in a business like Adobe. We also do focus a lot on learning and growth and believe that is a way of empowering everybody, but particularly women. And I think in the digital space where this topic of reaching out to customers that I talked about in the SME topic earlier, so do focus a lot on learning and growth and believe that is a way of empowering everybody, but particularly women. And I think in the digital space where this topic of reaching out to customers that I talked about in the SME topic earlier, recent research that we've done has shown that empathy in communications is really important. And that's a really good skill that is a lot of women have, right? So bringing that dimension to this world of digital and the requirements of how business needs to move forward, I see as a really good combination for us to put more focus on. You're on mute, Rodora.
Thank you, Simon. At this point, I'd like to call on CDA Brown. We've been observing that the U.S. support to ASEAN has been quite consistent over the years. There's strong emphasis on women's leadership, on providing access to women in terms of educational opportunities at a very high level, scholarships and all. What's your view on this matter, CDA Brown?
Thank you, Rodora. I'll be sure to just add, because I agree with many of the points and certainly appreciate the leadership from Ambassador Currie back in Washington. What we try to implement here at the U.S. ASEAN mission is much an extension of what she's doing globally. So let me just highlight quickly two programs that come out of the U.S. mission to ASEAN. One of them is our Young Southeast Asia Leaders Initiative. And that's our flagship project for engaging youth, both among the ASEAN countries as well as in Timor-Leste. That's a new addition. But we specifically have a track where we do a Women's Leadership Academy. And one thing I was really proud of my team for accomplishing is moving what is usually an in-person course where we get all of these bright young female leaders together to learn skills of public speaking and how to build a business plan and how to pitch all younger folks. We moved it all online. And so it was done over 2 weeks. And instead of just translating it, putting it online, there was a lot of thought to make sure that it was interactive and exciting and interesting. And we got really rave reviews. A similar extension of that program is where we provide seed funding for a program, we call it FEMA Lead. And it's in Vietnam. We mentor female students to become leaders, and we also provide seed funding so that they're able to get a jump start and initiate their projects. And of course, Vietnam, all of us who've been there, you certainly Ambassador Michalak from being an ambassador there, you feel an energy that it's contagious within Southeast Asia, but really things move quickly in Vietnam. We're happy to support that. Lastly, there's been some talk about a STEM. We have an annual prize here that we're doing a virtual booth for the Indo-Pacific Business Forum right now. So please do check it out. It's the ASEAN US Science Prize for Women. And it's a collaboration between the US government, underwriters, laboratories, as well as the ASEAN Committee on Science, Technology, and Innovation. So we've got US private sector, US government, and then also a broader ASEAN institution. This prize is pretty exciting because it does showcase the exceptional work of talented female scientists in the ASEAN region and inspires others to follow their lead, both male and female alike. The scientist that won this year, she hailed from Malaysia, and she focused her research on developing a vaccine against the virus that causes hand, foot, and mouth disease, as well as brain infection, a big issue out here in the region. So I think recognizing and really promoting those exceptional stories has been a way to underscore that the United States has this long-term relationship with ASEAN in women's empowerment, as well as education and training in youth.
Thank you, CDA Brown. I think the discussion has been very exciting and insightful so far that considering the limited time we have, kindly allow me to move on to the next question. So this next one is about COVID-19 and its impact on the youth. And as you know, COVID-19 has triggered a massive disruption of economies and labor markets with disproportionate impacts on youth employment, especially in Southeast Asia. So how do you think can ASEAN and US companies support impacted youth as they struggle to start their professional lives in the midst of the pandemic? May I then call on first Mr. Simon, followed by Ambassador Michael, please?
Rodora, yeah, sure. Okay, it's been obviously a massive impact of people graduating or coming to graduating. I think you were in my introduction mentioning that I do some mentoring of students who are about to go into that. So I've had real experience just recently of helping somebody to navigate that path. It's definitely good that governments have been stepping in to try and help with policies and funding and programs and encouraging the private sector to engage on that. What we've seen as well is it's another great opportunity for digital to help. When education has been disrupted, what we've done at Adobe is very quickly, in the early stages of COVID, we responded by saying, hey, look, we realize all those lecturers and all those students are now stuck at home. Here's access to our software that it was licensed for use in the university or college, but go and use it to carry on your studies, minimize the disruption. So the continuity of education we saw as a big theme for us to make sure that disruption didn't impact people's learning journeys, right? And then obviously, once they completed a learning journey, it's important to be able to put them in the path of opportunity. So we've done things like the Associate Championship, which is a competition for people to use our tools and showcase their talents and get snapped up by companies. That's in the creative space. And in this emerging world of customer experience digitally and data science and so on, we also had a global analytics competition, which for the first time was opened up to Asia universities. And I think we had 12 entries just from Singapore, which was great. So we're trying to get people engaged in showcasing their talents so that they get put in the path of opportunity once they've finished their education as well.
Ambassador Michael, please.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Rodora. This is another example where, again, the partnership between the U.S. private sector, government, U.S. government, and ASEAN comes to the fore. Simon was just talking about mentoring. One of the big things that we're doing actually within ASEAN, in cooperation with the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, is looking at what is called it's called the AMEN program, which is a mentoring program, which works for SMEs, but also works for youth. I think that Melissa also mentioned YSEALI, which is a very exciting program that the U.S. ASEAN Business Council has partnered with the mission to ASEAN to put on several webinars and to introduce them to yet another program which the U.S. ASEAN Business Council is putting on. This next program was actually one which is very interesting. It was launched in May of 2018, and it was had the vision of leveraging talent development in ASEAN students to meet the demand of the modern job market. The initiative was first raised by Sultan Hassan Al Bolkiah of Brunei Dar es Salaam during the ASEAN-US Leaders Summit in Sunnylands, California in 2016. From this idea, the U.S. ASEAN Business Council, along with the ASEAN economic ministers, worked together to put together the U.S. ASEAN internship program and put it on the U.S. ABC website. And here we introduce students to information on internship opportunities offered by American companies operating in Southeast Asia to achieve the goals of building qualified and skilled talent. The program also organizes capacity building activities through workshops, webinars, and internship fairs. And we think that this kind of a program, also coupled with the mentorship that Simon and actually quite a few members of the U.S. ASEAN Business Council participate in, work to actually reach out to the youth. We also, of course, do things like participate in former Indonesian ambassador to the U.S., Dino Jalal's annual meetings on foreign policy and youth in Jakarta, which are really exciting programs and are another platform for trying to introduce youth to internships with American companies. So we're also looking at, as Simon pointed out, using our ICT companies to provide digital platforms and to provide software and other educational experiences which can be used in teleeducation, and trying to work with governments as they put together their COVID-19 recovery programs to build the kind of ICT infrastructure that we need in order to get the internet out to rural villages and to people all over ASEAN, so that we can expand the universe of kids who are actually able to take advantage of some of the excellent programs, not only on our SME Online Academy website, but also the immense, the very rich level of online education that are from American universities and secondary education, as well as from other countries around the world. So again, it's a combination of the private sector, public sector, ASEAN, and the United States government working together as a team to try to help the youth of ASEAN move ahead in spite of the COVID virus. Thanks.
Thank you for that response, Mr. Simon and Ambassador Michael. We really look forward to what future actions the USABC will be doing also to help ASEAN recover from the COVID-19. Due to the very limited time left for this panel discussion, if you would indulge, I would like to ask the last question and ask that CDA Brown and Ambassador Currie answer this one. So the last question is about education, health, and youth. And I would like to refer to a World Bank study that says an average child born in ASEAN today will only achieve about 59% of their full productivity potential as an adult due to insufficient education, healthcare, and in some cases, nutrition. So what are ASEAN and United States doing to bridge these gaps and help children in Southeast Asia obtain their full potential? So if I may call on CDA Brown first, please.
Sure, thank you. So, of course, I think U.S. ASEAN health cooperation is particularly in the spotlight right now because of COVID-19. But what I always say, what makes the United States different in how we cooperate with ASEAN, the organization, as well as the 10 ASEAN countries, is we don't just show up and hand something over and then head back home. A lot of our partnerships when it comes to children and health, this is long-term, years in the making, and we are working shoulder to shoulder, whether it be a CDC, Center for Disease Control scientist embedded in a Ministry of Health, or it be our longer-term foreign assistance programs. These aren't one-offs. These are long-term partnerships. And I think what COVID-19 has shown us is that we can draw on those relationships to pivot. And of course, the pandemic has created new needs. But at the same time, things like, child and maternal health, stunting, malaria, none of these things have gone away. And in fact, the people not receiving their regular health care has made it all the more pressing. So one thing that we launched, it was Secretary Pompeo, who in fact is here in Jakarta today. I just, was balancing the Indo-Pacific Business Forum and his visit here in Jakarta. he launched just a few months ago a new program called the U.S. ASEAN Health Futures. And what that is it's an umbrella to take into account everything we've been doing on health over the decades of partnership with ASEAN, what we're doing that's anew for the pandemic, and then what we're doing looking into the future. So again, it's not a one-off. It's a way to look at both existing and expanded health for public health and combating infectious diseases in the region. When we add up and we tally up everything that we've spent so far, and it was not an easy accounting exercise, I can say that 3.5 billion US dollars have been invested in this region, and that's headed to places like Laos, where USAID has a longstanding program to promote good nutrition, improved health outcomes among women and children under 2, and things like water and basic sanitation are just incredibly important. Same thing with the president's malaria initiative and our contributions to the Global Fund. The United States exceeds any other contributor with what we have given. We've helped reduce the prevalence of malaria in Burma by more than 80% since 2012. Looking at Cambodia, we've really worked hard to improve access to quality health services and to help with the way Cambodian children learn and all of that. Again, it's all the more important with the pandemic. We're not stopping what we were already doing. We're in fact building on that foundation and looking ahead to the future so that people can live fuller, more productive lives, especially children are most vulnerable.
Ambassador Currie, please.
Well, obviously, Melissa has gone through the range of incredible interventions on the development assistance and humanitarian side that the United States supports across the region. I can say from my personal experience, whether it was being up on the areas of the Thai-Burma border that were global hotspot epicenters of multi-drug resistant malaria, and seeing the work that our epidemiological crews and our treatment and training programs up there to help local communities develop their own capacity to manage malaria interventions and to collect high quality data and maintain the full treatment cycle. I mean, these are not easy things to do. It's easy to just drop off medication and take a picture and get back on a plane, as Melissa said, and walk away. It's much more. What the United States has done is investing in communities, and we're not even I mean, a lot of system strengthening, working with public health systems, but also working in with a lot of the harder to reach populations and really marginalized and vulnerable populations that where states are challenged to reach those populations and really struggle, whether it's refugees, migrants, and some of the other really vulnerable populations across ASEAN. And as women are often a large proportion of those vulnerable populations, we pay special attention to make sure that those programs are meeting their needs. When it comes to youth, though, we have a very special program in our office. Most of our work focuses on working age women. It is the Office of Global Women's Issues, but we do have one really great initiative that we do. It's actually called She's Great, which stands for Supporting Her Empowerment, Girls' Resilience, Enterprise, and Technology. And as you can see, it covers a lot of ground. But basically, what this really cool program does, it's targeted at middle school age girls, and it's both a STEM and STEM skills building program, as well as getting messages around women's empowerment into that key cohort at middle school, because that's a really vulnerable time, and it's really important to reach that cohort. And we are really excited that next year in 2021 we will be launching She's Great in Indonesia, and I couldn't be more excited about bringing this very innovative program to Indonesia. But we are really fortunate to have strong partners, whether it's USAID's interventions, a lot of which Melissa detailed, or the work that we're doing with the Development Finance Corporation and the Millennium Challenge Corporation, who are working on the structural issues in the economy that are going to allow these economies to create the jobs of the future. And they gender mainstream as they develop those interventions in partnership with the countries. And they are looking at youth employment issues, and they're working with, it's all about partnership. And we use that word very intentionally in the United States government because we really are trying to build partnerships. And our goal is to work ourselves out of a job so that countries are able to stand on their own 2 feet. So we want countries that are independent, that are self-reliant and able to exercise their sovereignty and make sovereign decisions. And we need them to be able to grow their economy, to have good governance, and in order to be that kind of partner. So that's where we're focused. And those are all things that are going to be really important for the young people in these economies as well, to create the economies and the opportunities for the future.
Thank you, Ambassador Currie, for that wonderful response, and of course to CDA Brown for answering that last question. I'm afraid, dear panelists, that we have reached the end of our time slot for this panel discussion. I would like to sincerely thank all of you for staying throughout the discussion and offering your insights and so much information. I have personally learned a lot from this panel discussion, and I very look forward to having future discussions in this, and probably a stronger collaboration between the US and ASEAN in the area of preparing the future workforce. With that, I would like to thank you very much, and I hope you keep safe and be healthy always. Thank you very much.